Hello everyone, it is Friday, April 12th. If you haven't watched yesterday's video, you should do that now, because it's actually the intro to today's video. So now, with no further ado, my favorite banned books. Beware, there's spoilers ahead. Number 5. Bridge to Terabithia by Katherine Patterson. Bridge to Terabithia is about a 5th grade boy named Jess who feels out of place at home and school. He becomes friends with his new neighbor Leslie, who teaches him to look at the world a little differently, and together they create the imaginary kingdom of Terabithia. This book is clever, inspiring, beautifully written, and yes, very, very sad. In the 1990s, this book was the 8th most commonly banned book in the United States. So why does this book make people mad? First of all, spoiler, Leslie dies in the end. It is horribly, horribly sad, and you don't see it coming, and it just swoops in and punches you in the gut. And it's awful. Second, there's discussion of religion. Leslie and her family are not religious, and their ideas make Jess take a second look at the ideas that he's grown up with. The book has an overall humanist feel that makes a lot of religious people uncomfortable. Children's book doesn't have the same religious views as you. You should ban it from schools. Here's one of my favorites. One group wanted to have the book banned from schools because it contained disrespect for adults and an elaborate fantasy world that might lead to confusion. We believe this material is satanic, a danger to our children, is being studied excessively, and has no place in our schools. Hear that, kids? Don't use your imagination, because that's actually witchcraft. Here's why you should read it anyway. Bridge to Terabithia is not about practicing witchcraft. I don't even know where these people get this idea. Or that adults are stupid, or that you shouldn't have religion. Here's what it's actually about. Friendship, imagination, acceptance, dealing with grief, looking past your first impressions of people, family, regret, and that sometimes bad things happen to good people and it's not anybody's fault. Learning, then by all means, don't let them read this book. Otherwise, it is one of the best children's novels I have ever read. Number 4. His Dark Materials by Philip Pullman. When I tell you the name of the first book in the series, you'll understand why this book is on this list. The first book in the series is called The Golden Compass. Yeah, that one. And then the second and third one are The Subtle Knife and The Amber Spyglass. These books are about a young girl named Lyra Balakwa and the adventures she has traveling throughout her own world, where people's souls take physical form in the shapes of various animals, and then later through parallel worlds with friends such as a boy named Will, a talking polar bear named Yorick, and a witch named Seraphina. So why is it banned? Oh, where to begin? The overriding themes in these books is that organized religion is fallible because it is run by fallible people. The capital C Church in the series is the main villain, and it so obviously represents the Catholic Church that it's no surprise the Pope condemned it when the movie came out a few years back. And, spoiler alert, is produced when people learn to think and understand things for themselves, which is why the church in the series considers it evil. It's more complicated than that, but that's the main gist of it. So yeah, there's some very blatant atheist themes going on in these books, which of course makes a lot of people angry. And then aside from that, this book also has child abuse, at the hands of the church and the government, no less, torture, death, souls in the form of animals, the separation of people's souls from their bodies, a pair of male angels who are gay lovers, violence, and some pretty freaking scary stuff involving souls and harpies and specters and all sorts of scary monsters and stuff. So yeah, these books do give people a lot of ammunition. So why should you read it? These books are beautiful, moving and thought-provoking, and there is not a single one-dimensional character in these books. Now, these are probably not the best books for an 11-year-old because they can be pretty scary and they're also kind of complex, but that's a decision for individual families to be making for themselves. And as for the religious aspect, if your belief in God can be shaken by a fantasy story in which there are talking polar bears and adventures through parallel universes, you probably should just give up on reading anything ever. But if you believe in things like human decency, agency, protecting children, fighting corruption, learning to love, self-discovery, pursuing knowledge and understanding, and loyalty, then you have got to read these books. No, really, read these books. I cannot geek out over them enough. Number 3. The Time Quintet by Madeleine L'Engle. The most well-known of these books is the first in the series, A Wrinkle in Time. The other books in the series are A Wind in the Door, Many Waters, A Swiftly Tilting Planet, and An Acceptable Time. I'm not even going to attempt to get into any of the plots of these stories because they are many and they are complicated. There's a lot of science and fantasy and science fiction and history all intermingling, and it's just really fascinating and complicated, and I should really stop geeking out over it so that we can finish this. Because trust me, I can geek out over these books for a long time. So why do people want to ban these books? Since A Wrinkle in Time is vastly more popular and well-known than the others, it's mainly the one that comes under fire. Reasons for banning this book are all over the place. For example, early challengers of the books didn't like that it had a lead female heroine. The author originally had a lot of trouble getting it published because it was too different, and because a lot of people couldn't tell if it was a children's book or not. Personally, I think people want to ban these books because they just don't get them. And let me tell you, if A Wrinkle in Time is too complex for you, you're definitely not going to get a wind in the door. Some people think it challenges religious beliefs, while other people think it's too religious. And as always, there's the presence of magic, riling people up into making claims of witchcraft and devil worship. I mean, yes, A Wrinkle in Time does have 3 witches, but she really just calls them witches for lack of a better term. Workings of the 5th dimension? You see why these books confuse people a little bit. There's also the mixing of science and religion that happens all over the place in her books, and it just makes people uncomfortable. You know, because religion and science are mutually exclusive and never support each other at all ever. It also deals with a lot of those big, rarely seen themes in books that are really hard for people to understand. You know, like love, courage in the face of danger, the bonds of family and friendship, doing the right thing and sacrificing for others. I mean, kids can't handle stuff like that. It's just too big for their small brains. Honestly, I could write a book about why you should read these books. These books are incredible. They're the kind of books that leave you in contemplative awe when you finish reading them, and they just make you want to be a better and more intelligent and moral person. Ugh, I love these books. Number 2, the Harry Potter series by J.K. Rowling. Come on, you knew this was coming. In case you've been living under a very large rock for a very long time now, Harry Potter is about an orphan boy who learns that he's a wizard and goes to wizarding school, and then fights evil with his friends. People want to ban it because it's popular and contains witchcraft. I mean, really, that's pretty much it. You could also argue that it contains scary monsters and villains, that Harry's abused by his relatives and teachers, but really, it's the witchcraft thing that gets people's wands in a knot. Never mind the themes of love and loyalty and courage and sacrifice. Never mind that it's repeated over and over that love is the most powerful form of magic there is. Never mind that the bullies and abusers are repeatedly shown to be wrong and eventually defeated. Never mind that these books have done wonders for increasing children's literacy all over the world. Never mind that J.K. Rowling herself is a Christian and that these books are riddled with Christian symbolism. The characters are doing magic, so these books are evil and will corrupt our children. And my number 1 favorite banned book of all time, The Giver by Lois Lowry. This is also just my favorite book of all time. This book also has a sequel called Gathering Blue and a threequel called Messenger. And the last one will make you weep like a child. But we're not going to talk about them right now. Giver takes place in a futuristic dystopian world where everything is perfect and controlled and moderated and the same. Where emotions are carefully checked, marriages are arranged, and experiences in general are limited. Jonas is special because he can see things that other people can't. And he's chosen to be the receiver of memories, which basically means he's a scapegoat and a container for all of mankind's memories and experiences and mistakes that all took place before the sameness of the past and of what could be, so that the rest of society doesn't have to. This book is its easily most horrifying and haunting scene, in which Jonas witnesses his father, who's a doctor, killing the less healthy of a set of newborn twins who look exactly the same. It's a traumatizing experience for Jonas, and it's a large part of what motivates the climax of the plot. There's also a scene in which a young girl, who was one of the earlier receivers of memories, gets overwhelmed by these experiences that she's forced to hold for everyone else, and she commits suicide. I admit, this is some pretty heavy stuff, especially for a kid. Other protests against this book have cited violence in the memories that Jonas sees. There's a scene in which Jonas and his friend are caring for the elderly, and they're giving baths to elderly people who are obviously naked. And there are also themes of sexual awakening as Jonas is finding himself attracted to his young female friend. Now, this is a book that is normally banned from children's and junior high classrooms. People generally don't have a problem with adults reading it. Now, I admit, this is not a book that you should lightly throw into a child's lap and let them go their way. But I also firmly believe that it is an excellent book for kids who are old enough to read it. My suggestion, read it first yourself, and then have your kids read it. Or read it with them, and then talk about it. There are some heavy themes in here, and the messed up society Jonas lives in can be disturbing. That being said, this is still a children's novel, and it's not like it gets graphic or lewd. It's just that these are serious concepts that kids can have a hard time with. Maybe if we treat books as windows to broader thinking and deeper connections, instead of as threats to a blissful state of ignorance, we won't feel like we need to, or even have the right, to stop other people from reading them.